both basic education and higher education. I have the two ministers here, Minister Nzimande and Minister Motshekga, who will speak to us on this very important subject that the whole of South Africa has been waiting for quite some time. Before we even start, may we indicate that today we are on the fifth day of stage 5 of the lockdown. Tomorrow, in fact, at midnight tonight, immediately after midnight, we'll be starting with stage 4 of the lockdown. So therefore, we are still under a state of disaster in the country. We are still under lockdown even tomorrow, but under another level. Because all of us must fight this COVID. All of us must work together to ensure that we win against this deadly disease, COVID. There are many people who have died in other countries, including in our own country. We therefore have a responsibility to work together and fight together this invisible enemy. Having said that, we have an opportunity today then to be addressed by our ministers of education. I will start with the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, Minister Blade Nzimande. Pepet.
Thank you very much, Minister Mthembu Mvelase. I'm also taking this out because I was told by my sister who has got hearing challenges. She was watching me on television the other day. She was so frustrated that if you speak with a mask, I can't read your lips, and it helps me to understand what you are saying. And then it also struck me, by the way, there are many other South Africans who are in the same situation, so that they are party to this. It's because we care about our people with disabilities. So it's not out of being ill-disciplined in taking out the mask. Program Director Babu Mvelase, Minister Mthembu, Minister of Basic Education, my colleague, Angie Motshekga, the two deputy ministers for higher education and basic education and senior management, members of the media, and to all our stakeholders out there, including students and parents and all South Africans. As you know, South Africa has entered into uncharted territory in confronting the aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic. But we are drawing on our long history of struggle against adversity to overcome this unprecedented challenge. Like all the other sectors in our society, we have been forced to take immediate and drastic measures to contain the spread of the virus and ensure our students and staff are protected. The essence of our challenge can be put thus: we are constrained by the very same challenges we seek to address, which is poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Ngesintu, Mvelase, siqinywa iyo le ntambo okufanele siyisebenzise ukuze sikhwele siye phezulu. From the moment the President declared the COVID-19 pandemic to be a national disaster, on Sunday, the 15th of March, the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, in conjunction with institutions, have put all our post-school educational institutions on early recess and effectively suspended academic activity. Today, the Ministry will be announcing measures in the context of the national COVID-19 measures announced by the Command Council on Wednesday, 29th April 2020. All the measures to be identified herein follow within the strategic logic of the National COVID-19 Management Strategy and is informed by three overarching considerations as captured in our thematic focus, #Save the Academic Year, Save Lives. Firstly, whatever we do in the post-school education and training sector, our responsibility is to lower the infection curve. That's our overriding concern. Secondly, we must save the 2020 academic year, but not at the expense of lives. Thirdly, our efforts to save the academic year must, as I say, avoid worsening the infection curve. We will be implementing a risk-adjusted strategy for the entire post-school education and training sector based on the national COVID-19 management protocols, and will direct and manage the way institutions carry out their academic mandates at all times within the strategic policy framework. On the 2020 academic year, guided by the work and decisions of the National Command Council, we've decided not to resume with campus-based academic activity throughout the post-school education and training sector, including all universities and TVET colleges, both public and private, during the Level 4 lockdown period, which starts tomorrow. The only exception will be the controlled return of final year clinical training students. It's mainly medical students who will also return under strict conditions to also directly assist with the health management campaign of the Department of Health. The risks of a return to normal campus-based activity for thousands of students and staff are simply too great and cannot function successfully outside of the national context of a general lockdown. In fact, to be specific, our formal institutions in the post-school education and training sector are made up of 2.5 million students. That's a big number, although far less than basic education. Universities and TVET colleges do not operate in a vacuum, but in a historically specific context. Against this background, and with the endorsement by the Command Council, we have decided that the current period from the 1st of May until South Africa transitions or moves into the lower levels of the COVID management strategy, we will use this period to put a number of critical interventions in place across our post-school education and training system. It will include the following. We will be developing and implementing effective multimodal remote learning systems, which will include digital systems, analog, and physical delivery of learning materials, to provide a reasonable level of academic support to all our students at all institutions to resume academic learning and teaching support. In other words, the fact that we are not opening campus-based does not mean that we're going to sit back. We are going to be working during the month of May flat out with a view that as soon as possible we are able to resume multimodal remote teaching and learning activities. As we are in an unprecedented emergency, we have to use all available tools to reach our students, fully cognizant that it will not substitute the need for contact learning when conditions permit. We are doing this. We want to make assurances to South Africa today. No single student or institution will be left behind in our strategy in terms of ensuring that we do all we can to complete the 2020 academic year. In the meantime, also, we are working hard to secure a universal access deal with the major mobile network operators around data and connectivity to support remote learning. We believe that with the help of Minister Mthembu, we are close to reaching such a deal with the mobile companies so that we are able to provide data to our students. Where physical delivery of learning materials are required and where no immediate digital means are ready, we will also be working to ensure that students are provided with instructional materials. We will also be working to finalize the procurement and distribution of devices, laptops in the main, for all NSFAS assisted students, both in the universities and TVET colleges, as well as the necessary connectivity into digital remote learning platforms. In this regard, I would like to appeal to all students to ensure that they urgently register their correct numbers, it's mostly cell phone numbers, with their institutions, so that when we finalize the educational rate for data, we can load it to the correct numbers so that all students can benefit. By so saying, Minister Mvelas, we are by no means suggesting we're going to be relying only on connectivity. But connectivity is absolutely necessary, though we will also be using other means to reach those students who are not connected. We are also going to use this time to strengthen our remote pedagogic teaching and learning models and sharing this across the TVET and university systems. Securing also, that's what we'll be doing, possible relief, stimulus, or emergency funding to our public institutions in distress, including critical areas of financial support that may be required. We will also be forging a compact for an equitable economic transformation that will ensure the advancement of the economic position of women, youth, and persons with disabilities, and that which promote localization and industrialization of our economy. Let me explain this a little. Both our departments, Higher Education and Training and the Department of Science and Innovation, will also continue to make a contribution to the broader goals of creating the kind of economy we want. That is why some research work is being done now by some of our science councils and some of our institutions in order to support the goal of dealing with all challenges that have now been created by this COVID-19 situation. But also, between now and the whole month of May, we'll be preparing all our campuses with deep cleaning and biosafety protocols to ensure readiness for eventual return of students and staff. And we want to say this, in the provision of personal protective equipment and cleaning materials and all that, we will be prioritizing procuring services from small and medium enterprises and cooperatives so that ordinary people are also part of this effort and they are able to benefit from that where possible. We are also going to be forging strong partnerships with both the Departments of Health and the Department of Basic Education to coordinate all efforts to successfully and safely implement the 2020 academic year and the phasing in of 2021 academic year. Our intention as a sector is to use this phase for planning and preparation at putting appropriate remote learning support systems in place for all our institutions, using whatever means available whilst preparing our institutional capacities for eventual return of students and staff once conditions permit. When students return to campuses, protocols will be in place for the maintenance of physical distance, access to hand sanitizers and protective masks, and continual deep cleaning of facilities. In addition, reopening will entail the 360-degree screening and or testing of staff and students with environmental cleaning of campuses and residences. We are also required. We will also be providing mental health support and other forms of support necessary for staff and students throughout. In a joint effort, Higher Health is our entity that was formed originally by universities. Now it has been extended to all our TVET colleges. Higher Health, supported by the Department of Health, the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, the Vice Chancellor's Association known as USAF, lines on managing COVID-19 in the sector post-lockdown. I therefore would like to take this opportunity to announce that these guidelines will be distributed formally to all universities, TVET, National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. NSFAS funding for all students will continue while the academic year is underway, even now during the lockdown, to maintain allowances for students while they complete the academic year. As a department, we are therefore working with NSFAS in modeling these costs. Given the fact that all our universities have already dispersed learning materials allowances to their NSFAS-supported students, I would like to urge our support their learning during this time. This does not depart from the fact that we have decided that we are going to offer guidance on universities. The 2020 academic year will be reorganized to enable all our institutions epidemiology and impact of the COVID-19 pandemic threat. The completion of the academic year 2020 and the start of academic year 2021 will be examinations and the release of those results, the matric results. Any plans to reopen universities for contact learning over coming months will necessarily have to be in line with the COVID-19 health and safety parameters, taking into account issues of physical distancing, biosafety, and other risks. As a result of highly uncertain and fluid social, the dates when physical return to campuses for the majority of our students will be possible. We want to underline this. Just because there are those who are putting us under pressure to say students must go back to institutions. We're not going to do that outside of the protocols of managing COVID-19. In this, we as a department are insisted we must be guided by science and what the health authorities say. We must not be guided by what seems to be politically correct feeling or populism. Because primary in the forefront, led by our president, our task is to save lives. Until we reach that point, every effort is now being made to put in place multiple and flexible methods of teaching and learning to support all our institutions and all our students. Within a national framework currently in place, each forms of remote and flexible learning from the beginning of June 2020 until a full return to contact teaching and learning is feasible. Ngamanye amazwi sifuna ukuthi uma kuqala uJune sesizenzile zonke lezi zinto esizishoyo la ukuze kwazi ukuthi kuqala ukufunda kodwa iseyingozi kangakanani. Our institutions will continue to offer training and support to academic staff and students in respect of the necessary technologies set by the Center for Industrial and Scientific Research, is working on developing a geospatial model to map the levels and quality of connectivity and other private facilities that might be used by students during this period. In addition, CSIR is modeling the carrying capacity of our National Command Council COVID-19 regulatory parameters. I have indeed mobilized both my departments to support these efforts. Once completed, this work should help us to better plan future normalization of activity on our campuses, whilst in the current period being able to access where appropriate decentralized learning facilities in various districts for study purposes. Sizofuna zonke indawo la abafundi bengakwazi ukuthola khona usizo, noma ngabe kusemakhaya noma ngabe kukuphi, ukuze sikwazi ukuthi sibathole la bekhona ukuze bakwazi ukuqhubeka nokufunda noma besekhaya. As a department, we are aware that the COVID-19 pandemic has created new significant financial pressure on universities. One such aspect which incurred significant losses as a result of the lockdown, say that in order to unblock this, government has made a provision for controlled relaxation to enable essential educational infrastructure projects to be resumed from the first, negotiate reduced liability terms with contractors. This also applies, by the way, to TVET colleges, because we do have construction also of a number of TVET college campuses. On TVET colleges, for the technical and vocational education and training sector, the 2020 academic year will also be restructured in line with the continuity of the semester and full year programs. To this end, our TVET colleges will have to reorganize the academic year to enable students to complete trimesters 1 and 2 for engineering studies, both semesters for business studies as to November 2020 will be deferred to a date to be determined after consultation with stakeholders. The exam sessions, as well as the short recess period, will be released in due course. In acknowledgement of the fact that almost all TVET college students do not have devices to work online, and furthermore do not have acquiring devices for all NSFAS students, including those in TVET colleges, and data as well. Radio and TV broadcasts have already begun in key subjects and are in the process of being expanded and will continue for 6 months. The use of textbooks, e-guides, past question papers, and uploaded YouTube videos are strongly advocated and supported through bulk SMSs from colleges and WhatsApp groups for ready and continuous access by students. On community education and training, which in the past was referred to as adult basic education and training, this sector also will resume teaching and learning in a staggered way in accordance with the revised academic calendar, which we will also release. Priority will be given to students doing the General Education and Training Certificate, Adult Basic Education and Training, and the Senior Certificate in preparation for sitting for the October-November 2020 exams. The lower level classes of adult education and training, levels 1 to 3, will resume on a later date, May, June, General Education and Training Certificate, Adult Basic Education and Training examinations, which were supposed to commence. To recoup the number of days lost during lockdown, the number of college holidays will be reduced for June and September 2020. In this regard, a revised academic calendar will be issued to all community education and training colleges, indicating the increased number of tuition days. We will also engage with organized labor in the implementation of these measures. And will be aligned with that of the Department of Basic Education. In tandem with the resumption of teaching and learning, when it starts, engagements with the department and the community education and training. The last matter that I would like to deal with is on skills development partners will ensure that during the months of May to June, learners as per level 4 guidelines. In other words, as firms, factories, and other workplaces gradually open in terms of level 2. I have extended the due date for the submission of workplace skills plans, annual training reports by employers, which are normally submitted on 30 April every year. I have issued a directive to all CETA measure in terms of those trainees. We are also implementing measures at Indlela. Indlela is our trade test center, where we run trade tests for artisans who are entering the premises in strict compliance with the COVID-19 protocols and requirements. We will also be announcing on an ongoing basis as to exactly what is happening on this front. In the same vein, the National Skills Fund will be engaging the public and private skills development providers on the dates how one of our trade unions, and working together with them, the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, as well as the Health and Welfare and the ETDP CETAs. We are developing a concrete plan on the training of various categories of frontline workers, particularly those working in our health facilities in support of the management of COVID-19. In this regard, I'm happy to announce that funding has been set aside for the training of almost 18,000 frontline health workers, the leadership and membership of trade unions, the shop stewards, and other workers who are dealing with occupational safety and health within the context of COVID-19. This training will take the form of to ensure maximum coverage and reach. The training will also cover workers on night duty. In addition, and working with the Department of Social Development, I'm pleased also to point out that 1,210 unemployed social workers will be recruited and placed on a 12-month internship to work with our communities to tackle social distress and other psychosocial challenges facing households and communities during this difficult period. In conclusion, the extraordinary measures that we are announcing today to ensure a contingency plan is in place during phase 4 lockdown have been enriched by the extraordinary contributions received from many colleges, the South African Union of Students, the trade union movement, student political formations, political parties, religious formations, and non-governmental organizations, academics, and scientists. We also have a ministerial task team representing most of these stakeholders that has been dealing with and is dealing with COVID-19 management, chaired by our Deputy Minister, Bhuti Manamela. We pay tribute and appreciate the role of all these stakeholders. I would like to thank all is largely guided by the understanding and the agreements that we have reached together. As a ministry and a department, will be constantly communicating with all our stakeholders on an ongoing basis, and also communicating with the entire nation through multiple platforms of communication on any developments within the sector, so that no one remains unclear as to what the post-school education and training system will be doing during this time. Thank you very much, Minister Mthembu.
Asibonge kakhulu Phephetha. Sibonge baba. Sibonge futhi nakumhlonishwa isekela lakho ubuthi ngiyambona lapho uManamela. Sibonge ukuthi nibe khona nani, sibonge kuSisrijana Mhawuli. Isekela lika Mama Motshekga. Without any further ado, we'll call upon the Minister of Basic Education to come and speak to us. Minister Motshekga.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Minister Tembu, for your presence. So, Program Director, we agree with higher education that in the past few weeks, as South Africans, but also as the Department of Basic Education, have experienced major problems. And as a result, there has been an increase in anxiety, understandably so, because as a sector, 12.4 million are in the public sector, about 600,000 in private schools, schooling, and when are learners going to be allowed back, if indeed they are allowed back. So yesterday and this morning, the National Coronavirus Command Council considered both reports of basic education and higher education in the context of COVID-19. And we can report that as a sector, since we closed schools on the 26th of March, we've had more than almost 50 consultations with different stakeholders. And in each meeting, we were deliberating on the future of basic education following the COVID-19-induced national state of disaster. And the main principles that have been guiding us in this engagement were first ensuring that as a sector, we contribute towards the lowering of infections so that we don't contribute towards infections. We also ensure the safety of our learners and our educators, but also we balance that around protecting the academic year of 2020 as much as possible. And at all times during the consultations, we did start our conversation about the safety of learners, the safety of teachers, and the safety of our employees. Yes, indeed, we made safety a priority in all our engagements. And I can say, Chair, that we had consultations, very fruitful consultations with all teacher unions in the sector, SADTU, NAPTOSA, South Africans on the Revesa, INI, NATU, and PEU. We also met with the Association of Special Education. We met with Education Management Association of South Africa, IMASA. We also engaged with South African Principal Associations. We also, more importantly, also engaged with all the governing bodies, your FEDSAS, NSGB, the Governing Alliance, and, and all the other associations that are active in the education sector. We also had engagements with the IEB because indeed we had to relook at our plans with them. We had consultation with National Alliance of Independent Schools Associations. We also had engagement with South African Comprehensive Institute, SAICA, and different faith-based organizations. As I said, we consulted UMalusi also as our examining body, with the Education Labor Relations Council, with the South African Council of Educators, with Education and Development Practice Sectors in Education, which is the EDTP. And through the NECT, we're very privileged to also have consultations with many organizations that are involved in the education space. We had a teleconference which included more than 77 members or leaders of about 200 organizations involved in education. And as I said, at all these meetings, the principle of opening schools at the right time was accepted once all conditions have been met. All sectors indicated what are the conditionalities which were accepted. Teacher unions made submissions to say what is it that they will really support to support their members to go back to work. Parents also gave us advice about what are the conditionalities that will really make them support our work. But the bottom line is, in all these consultations, the principle of opening schools at the right time was accepted once all conditions were met. There were a number of proposals which I can't go through. I think we'll release them, DG, in our website, that there were proposals around community and town halls, and we'll release the statement that we presented to the NCC today, because what would have happened, which created some difficulties for us, we used the same document to consult all stakeholders. We didn't change the document midstream. And I think it led to some misunderstanding that we had not considered what people gave to us, whereas we had to finish the whole process of consultation, then consolidate the report, incorporating all the suggestions that have been brought forward.
Just hold it. I'm told that we have lost transmission. If we can have a sense, when did we lose so that we start where we lost? Are we back now? But when did we lose it? They didn't say. They are back now. Continue.
Okay. So all our partners requested that the department should provide personal protection equipment. And again, in the full report, we indicate that we will indeed provide like face masks to all the learners in all the categories from quintile 1 to 5. They also insisted that we have to make sure that we provide awareness campaign to parents in particular, and agreed on the proposal that the opening should not be a one sweep opening. So I know parents were very worried that we said on the 4th, there are 7-year-olds who go to school. We never said that. We said we'll have a phased approach when conditions are ready. So we never said people will be there to say, what if my 7-year-old loses a mask? We also want to report, again, it's contained in our report, the work that we did since the closing of schools, not necessarily the lockdown, and even during the lockdown, to make sure that indeed we keep education going. And we have to express our grateful to our partners of the Department of Basic Education. We partnered with 123 radio stations, with 6 different television channels, and in total, those channels reach about 35 million people. And the initiative was ready to put in place an intervention to bring curriculum lessons to households across the country to assist learners as school remained closed. This was in bid to minimize the impact of coronavirus on basic education. In addition to the 13 radio stations of the SABC, which broadcast in all official languages, we had 110 community radio stations that were also involved in carrying curriculum contents on a daily basis. In addition, there were learner support programs which were aimed again at limiting the impact of the lockdown to the school calendar. And these initiatives are part of the broader efforts to prevent a total loss of school year since the lockdown was announced by the President. The radio lessons broadcasts do provide curriculum support lessons in various grades, including ECD, and some of the subjects which are covered include maths, physical science, English, foreign first additional language, life sciences, accounting, and there's a variety of African languages were also covered under the ECD basket. And learners were encouraged to check their local listings to the exact slots for radio. We also made available resources online for those who could access such online resources. And we really want to sincerely appreciate the ongoing contribution by our partners and to acknowledge that all these efforts are not perfect, because we have assessed and we're working also with schools that have been using ICT services that we have been using. And we can say, unfortunately, that not all learners, very few learners are reached, and even those are reached, schools tell us the impact is less than 20% of what would have happened in the classroom, which makes a point that we are saying our strength as a sector, if we have to save the year, our strength is in the classroom. Anything else would not be able to assist us to a very large extent. Amongst other decisions we took, like higher education, we had to postpone the May-June exams, and the 350,000 learners that were supposed to start on the 4th of May will now be part of the December exam. So due to the lockdown, we are unable to complete our preparations, which include the printing and distribution of question papers, the appointment of invigilators, markers, and the general readiness in marking centers. So the examinations that were supposed to start on the 4th of May will be matched with the November examinations. And a new timetable will be met, for the match exams will be communicated as soon as possible. And this postponement of exams has led us to the biggest number of learners ever seen in the country to sit for matric exams at the same time. The highest we once had, Minister Mthembu, was 800,000. But with this postponement, we've exceeded 1 million. So it means it changes completely our planning processes. And members will also be aware that during the lockdown, we've had to postpone all our enrichment programs, your spelling bee, your school music competitions, and all sporting activities, including school trips. We really want to pay also attention to the question of school fees, because it has been arising to a very large extent. As CM, we did take note of the concern regarding the issue of school fees. And we did indicate that from the start that school fees are payable. Where children attend fee-paying schools, we really request parents to help pay schools, because these funds are normally used to pay the salaries of your school governing body appointed teachers, so they don't get money from government. And it was agreed that provinces will work with these schools to find an amicable but implementable solution. In the meantime, we continue to urge our parents to continue paying school fees, and if they cannot, they should make arrangements with the schools so that we can relieve the pressure on schools. As I said, since we've been working on a recovery program, in the past weeks, we've had work streams that constitute of our professionals, constitute of our experts in the field or in the areas of work, but also experts from provinces. And we have been working on different tentative dates depending as to when, as a sector, we are ready, and when, as a sector, the National Coronavirus Command Team gives us a nod. So each province, district, and school, we've agreed that they must have practical and comprehensive plans, and the plans must always talk to risk profiles in the areas in which schools are located, because different areas have got different risk profiles. As much as parents said, don't separate our children too much and say there's this program for this community, there's this program for this community. But also we're aware that there are areas where the virus is severe, it's an epicenter, and therefore the measures are going to have to be different. And the decisions that were taken or that have been taken around the recovery plan are based on scientific considerations. So last night it was Motshekga and Mhaule. It's not us, we've been consulting, we've been advised by the National Dog Team, we've been also advised by health, but also experts in the sector. And amongst other things that we've been advised was to adopt, and which we have agreed also with the sectors that we have spoken to, that we must adopt a phased approach. So again, Minister Mthembu, I think the concern that when we open, it will be 13 million of kids on the street. It's not even part of what we are proposing. Because uppermost in our planning is the health and safety of school communities. As I say, particularly our learners, our teachers, and the general staff working in schools. We have already as a sector developed what we call standard operating procedures for the containment and management of COVID-19. So as part of our preparations, among other things, we have developed standard operating procedures on the containment and management of coronavirus for different institutions in terms of what the phasing plan and approval by Cabinet and the NETJOC is going to be. And these standard operating procedures have been developed in consultation with health. They provide guidelines for all administrators step by step on how to prevent the spread, manage the environment, and manage COVID infections. We have guidance again for childcare facilities on preventing the spread of coronavirus, the role of facilities and schools, the management procedures for hygiene, how we're going to manage absenteeism around transport, about closure of units, offices, or departments if there's a problem, but also on how to clean educational institutions. And the pillar of our plan is based on the guidance that we've been getting from health. For instance, we are proposing that there won't be, there are obvious things that have been said or even indicated by World Health. Amongst others, we're saying there should be no learners sharing a desk, there should be no hugging, and we've spelled all of them out. One of the key concerns was infrastructure, and we're cognizant of the challenges that we have around infrastructure. But amongst others, that we have put as conditions that classes will be sanitized every day before classes start. Learners' hands will be sanitized as when they enter classroom. There will be limitations of movements between learners. There will be no clustering of desks. There are also guidelines around transport. We are working with the Department of Transport. And also, as a sector, we are working on the remedial programs problems that we know as a sector. The one which is really outstanding is shortages of classrooms, but also the provision of water tanks and the provision of water and proper sanitations. Again, these are the conditions which are going to determine our phasing in. So we won't phase in any school or allow any school which has very limited or has challenges around water and allow them to open schools. As the sector, we've also ordered basic hygiene and sanitation packages. We also have, as I said, put in place different risk reduction methods around school classes, classrooms and toilets, bathrooms, offices, and also about food preparations, because also there are new guidelines about what should happen in the school nutrition program, about the daily duties of cleaners. We've agreed to the NETJOC that we have to increase cleaners in our schools to make sure that indeed they are kept clean. There are also proposals around screening, that learners and teachers will be screened on a daily basis, and testing. So again, the plan requires us, as we discussed in the subjected to verification, the raised temperature, immediately how do we respond? So we have to align also our systems as departments and as government. Same with the Department of Transport. If they come across learners who are in privately organized transport by parents and they are on the back of a van, what is it that needs to happen? Again, in preparing for the protection of the year, we've also had a work stream looking on the curriculum recovery framework. And I won't get into it, but amongst other things, We've agreed that there must be, on the life orientation, there must be more information on COVID-19 to make sure that our children understand what is happening, on inclusion and equality, on a targeted approach, on size and scope. And we can confidently say, because some people are concerned to say if a child has been infected with corona, kids will call him corona. We've had to deal with AIDS in our system. And we've managed to contain even stigmatization, and we think we'll use those skills and those expertise. Because it's not the first time that we're dealing with a situation where there could be stigmatization. But more important, it's also to up our game around partnerships with the NGOs that we work with, but we've had to sit on our committee that is going to ensure that we tick all the boxes. So they've also offered the resources and the expertise to make sure that indeed we can have a CODIV compliant environment. We are also aware that the disease has brought quite a number of problems. We are also gearing ourselves to get to that. Now on the matter, I guess the purpose uchoni magazi kulinda ebesimfuna ngayo ubusuku bonke eyokuthi this week gazetted legally by law. Opened schools in 15th January 2020 and it ended up on the 4th of December. That's a legal instrument. We then had to, with all this disruption, consider a different calendar which we'll have to gazette when we are ready. And in the proposed calendar that we're consulting around. So Motshekga le Mhaule ba sonke qeto. Bana di pampiri ne tsamba bua le batho ka bona hore ke etaba re bona tje. We were proposing that on the 4th of May, next week Monday, the sector opens. And we never said kids must go back to school unless NATA starting early. Because the questions that people are asking us, have teachers been oriented? No, it has not happened. But for us to be ready, we need to open the sector so that the first group of officials go in and prepare all the things that people are raising as concerns, and very legitimate concerns. So we are just on the same page. We have the equal thinking capacity like yourselves, concerns and considerations. So ke batla repeat that tabai. Ke re ka di 4 ha re re bana ba sekolong. Ka di 4 re keta pele ya lefapha e qale ho ya mosebetsing hore e tlo lokisetsa ho bulwa ha dikolo ka nako e o tla be re dumelaneng ka yona. So that's where the 4th come in. So it pinned therefore city asitha abantu abazali baqale bawasha ama uniform babe ready sizovula abantwana bayeza abezi nge4 kuzoza the first team. For instance, kwa DB kuzoza mina nama DDG sibheke curriculum busha, sibheke plans zethu busha, siqale ukulungisela ukuvula izikolo. Whether sivula ngoSeptember kodwa fanele siqale ukulungisa. So siqala nge4. So kuzoyika ithimba loqala nge4 kube nama, so it will be your senior officials, because they even have to come and receive. Must order ama mask azofikela kubani. Must order ama sanitation azofikela kubani. Must order ama desk azofikela nalamanzi city sawafuna. Fanda thola umuntu azofikela kuye. So that's why we say kadi 4 the sector isimbana. But let's go. The province di tla shore ke bo mambatlang. U national department ra tseba le DG rotlamang. Ho tla DG nna deputy minister le di DDG fela. Ka di 80 ho tlotla broad management. We are less than 50. Njalo njalo until such time we have made the sector coronavirus friendly. And then we are proposing that ka di 11 ho tle school management teams that would have been prepared by the first team that goes in. Ka di 18 we start receiving teachers. We would have worked with teacher unions because we have agreed with them that we will not, they've given us conditionalities. And we need at least 2 weeks to be able, or 3 weeks to meet those conditions. So I'm saying from the 18th, the teachers have to come in and prepare on the proposed date. And we are proposing, as we said repeatedly, that we will face grades. Okusho ukuthi high school enabantwana 1,500 kuzoza abantu ama-matriculant awu-100 phela. So indaba ye-spacing nani doesn't arise because which means they have the whole school to themselves. Lenge siyixoxa muva kodwa mabeza ngalanga sibaze ngalo boza bodwa. Same thing in the primary schools. When we say grade 7s have to come, they'll have the whole school to themselves, they'll have the whole teacher cohort to themselves, and we will only phase in the other grades as and when we are prepared. So okwamanje for the whole of May silungisela ama-7 nama-12. But sikala nge-4 ukulungisa. Because that's what has been really making sivumelana nazo ayikho futhi esiphikisayo. Nge-4 sizabe singekho ready ukwamukela abantwana ezikolweni. Kodwa sidinga inyanga yonke uqala nge-4 ukulungisela ukuthi beze. Futhi i-team the coronavirus control team ifuna even by the 18th. So masingazi nalelo box nomhawule ngeke sivunyelwe futhi ukuvula ikolo. So yonke into enihlupha ngayo ukuthi hey isikolo sizogcwala we've considered it in our planning. And the main aim, as I said, with all the humility, Minister Motshekga, is to make sure that as the education sector, we don't contribute at all in the spread of the virus. That's why samba kancane ukwenza sure ukuthi we are safe. But on the other hand, we also say we have to protect the academic year. And that's why sifuna ama-grade 12 na fantasy noba zofunda nge-2019 iphepha labo lihlezi la lihlezi khona libalindile belingasi coronias kodwa bazolibhala linjalo. So is the internal grades that we are working with provinces to say let's assess them depending on when we open on the percentage of the work that they would have done this year. Into singaziyenza futhi bangahlali balale bathi akuzoba ne pass 1 pass all lona ngeke kube khona. Ngampani baphindi class. I pass 1 pass all lona ngeke kube khona. Abayi kwi grade landela kungabhalwanga. One way or the other, the internal grades. Sizothatha umsebenzi. We're going to take the work that we are not going to assess this year and integrate it in 2021 so that 2020 no 21 the curriculum will be really worked together so that again they don't lose. But Mr. Mthembu, I'll really be failing my duty if I don't express my deep concern about what is happening in our schools when the lockdown was imposed. Different provinces have reported that 962 schools have been vandalized in almost all our districts. There's been theft, vandalism, so that nje kukodwa nje sithi nje simele corona kanti sothuta siyaneyikolo mase sisiqeda ngale corona. There have been incidents of vandalism, of burglaries taking place all over. Our ICT equipment is going. The food that we left abruptly has been stolen. And Umlazi, for instance, has been the worst hit with 41 schools affected, just as a district. And we say we're extremely concerned by this level of criminality and are really appealing to communities. And I have to thank my colleagues, Minister Cwele, for assisting us as much as possible in this crisis. So I want to conclude saying ikhuluma indaba ye-4. Ezinye sizazizwa ukuthi i-4 asiye esikolweni. Kuya abasebenzi. Bayenzani? Bayolungisela abantwana ukuthi beze mabeza. Okusemqoka njoba sisho esikubeke phambili. It's the safety of our children, the safety of our workers, but also balancing that with protecting the academic year 2020. And logo ngeke siretse ka bohlaswa re keke ra yetsa ka o hloka kelelo re tla yetsa ka makgethe a makalo a tla etsang hore ho ska ba le tsietsi dikolong tsa rona so ke batla o tisa seo le hore mhlomong ha batho ba utlwe re bua ka di4 mhlomong o le a hloka mo rile ra ska ra khona ra qakwa ke leleme ra ska khona o itlhalosa hantle so ke leka ka hore ke tlhalose ka mong ka khonang ka teng hore di4 ho tla ba sebetsi le bona ha ba tlotla ka ofya ka nako ile nngwe ho tlotla ba tlatla ka maemo a bona ba tlatla ka nako tse fapaneng empa se tshwantse ba se etse go re thusa go re sebedisane mmogo le healthy gore dikolo di kgone go bula. So I really want to ensure our stakeholders that the implementation plans are informed by 3 principles: not spreading the virus, not endangering the lives of our educators, learners, and workers, but also protecting. So that's the balance we're trying to seek. And as I say, the phase in is monitored. It has to get an approval of cabinet. What we have been doing with the documents that we either leaked or published, and we will put so that kungayi ngothubani wazibani othola information sesoyifaka ku website wasicacile ukuthi there is really lots of support that and interest in the sector. We will work with the DG to put today's because I can't give all the the details here on our website, and people can visit the website and get the full plan of what we are proposing. But I want to really most sincerely thank our partners. They've been extremely helpful. They've guided us on a number of things. There were blind spots that we had during the planning. For instance, the Council of Learners with Special Needs, and in particular DEFSA, said, no, your mask covering mouths doesn't work for us as a sector. Please make sure that you have your see-through masks, and it has been very helpful. Really in areas where we had the blind spots. We've also agreed that we will establish COVID-19 control teams in every province, in every district, in every circuit, in every school, so that parents are represented, or the council, teachers are represented, officials are represented, to make sure that everything, we tick all the boxes. We also think we'll have to intensify our communication so that we don't find ourselves misunderstood, I think, or misquoted, or misread. The way I think we really had poorly communicated in the past few days, that what we presented at the portfolio committee was a consultation document, not a decision. A decision about what is going to happen finally is going to come from cabinet. We're having a document through which we're consulting and getting people's views. And the other area we're misunderstood also is whether we have not taken to consideration all the proposals. They are there, and they are forming part of the plan that we are working on in the month of May in preparing for the opening of schools. So I want to thank our partners, and it is a view that I think from this crisis we're gaining a lot. We're gaining lessons about ICTs and are learning or are finding ourselves forced to do things differently. We've been using ICTs to support classrooms, not ICTs to be teaching tools. But it's quite clear, moving forward, we have to re-engineer our processes. And we believe that with collaborative effort, with partnership, we can and will overcome our difficulties. And we appeal to each one of us to work, to cooperate, and ensure that we put the interest of our children, our educators, and our workers a top priority, bearing in mind that as a sector, we have to make sure that at all costs, in whatever we do, we are not going to be responsible for the spreading of the virus. And we are taking counsel, advice, and information from all sectors, from researchers, from experts, and all other people, including just ordinary parents, on what they think should happen. So, Minister Nyabong.
Thank you, Sis Angie. Uze wafika bathi ngeXhosa apho kufele khona ithole. Asho njalo kamaXhosa. Thank you very much to people at home. The reasons why we come to give these briefings is because we know for a fact that you need this information. Many of us are parents. Many of us might be teachers, many of us might be pupils, many of us might be students, at various universities and TVETs. So the information that was given here has been very, very helpful. So without any further ado again, we will then get to questions. Now, Sis Angie and Babu Mpepet, you have not been here for some time. We have now gone virtual. You'll hear people asking you questions from somewhere. Others will just send us their questions through WhatsApp. That we are connecting with all journalists throughout the world. So we will start. Are we having? Okay, we'll start with our WhatsApp team. Do we have questions now?
Yes, Minister, we have. The first 5 questions are directed to the Minister of Higher Education.
Okay. Kuba.
Only the first 5
Kuba.
of many. The first one is from Stele from the Sunday Times. And she has 2 questions. The first one is, in terms of the procurement of laptops, the Minister mentioned that doing so for NSFAS students only. What about those who are not on NSFAS, waiting for allocation for funding, or the so-called missing middle? How will they be helped? The second question is, calls have been made for the provision of accommodation at university residences or elsewhere for those who do not have conducive studying environments at home, such as electricity or being able or stable network connectivity. Has there been consideration around that? The next question is from Sesona from News 24. The first one is, some institutions resumed remote teaching and learning a week ago. What is the department's take on this? What has the director from the department to institution been? Because it may seem that some students are now ahead of others. Will those institutions that have already rolled out online learning be asked to pause until such time that all institutions are ready, or will they be allowed to continue with online learning? Another question is, how does the department plan to reach out to students from rural areas? The third question is from Nomsa Maseko from BBC News. Her question is that the minister mentioned that students must register their cell phone numbers in order to benefit from data deals. Can you please give more details in this regard? Where do they register, with whom, and what's the number to use? The fourth question is from Titi Madia from News 24. What plans have been put in place for clinical students who have practical subjects such as part of their core curriculum, such as nursing students?
Can you say that again, sorry?
What plans have been put in place for clinical students who have practical subjects as part of their core curriculum, such as nursing students? And the last question is from Precious of Opera News. What plans are in place for students to collect their personal items from campuses before the deep cleaning of campuses commence?
You have spoken to 5 questions that are directed to Minister Nzimande. Do we have questions that are directed to the Minister of Basic Education? I want to take them so that as he answers his questions, she is also putting her mind to the other questions. Maybe whilst we are waiting, let's get those that are calling in.
Thank you very much.
Mshengo, are you there? Awusipilile baba, sipile njengosheleni. Awusho ke baba?
Minister, on the issue of which we spoke about, there will be no part 1, part 4. Does that apply only to grade 7 and grade 12, or does that apply across board? And why would you say that it's in the education sector, whereby at the end of the year, on the payment, on the complete payment of schools, there are issues? What is so special in this particular regard? Because even if kids need study online, it can not be that if they train as they go to school, that also is available at the universities where they have use of libraries and computer laboratories, especially given that a lot of parents also look for this particular Thank you very much.
Thank you, Msheng. If we have not heard you properly, we had a problem with the volume, particularly in your first question. If we have not heard... Martin? Martin, we are listening. Oh, I think there's a problem with...
Bonga, you're through.
Call from Randburg. Hello?
Okay, who's speaking now?
Hi, Minister. It's Bonga Dlane from EWN.
Go ahead, Bonga.
Mine is from Minister Zimande and also Minister Motshekga. Minister Zimande, when you say the academic year will be remodeled and might even go into 2021, does that mean we can expect that the government will try to rush in 2021 academic year, or will there...
I don't know what happened to you there, Bonga, but it looks like we lost you. Minister Motshekga, if you have them from our WhatsApp group.
Yes, Minister. The first one is from Sophie Mkwena from the SABC, and she says the World Health Organization has recommended that people with health challenges and those above 60 are vulnerable. How do you plan to deal with this? Is this not going to affect the staff component in the sector? The next question is from Kyla from BBC News. What does the minister believe might be the reason behind the spike in attacks on schools during the lockdown? And what are the department's plans to repair these schools? When will they be repaired? And can I just squeeze in one last question?
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. And then there's a clarity-seeking question from Vickers Berger from Netwerk 24. He's asking for the minister to confirm whether grade 7 and 12 pupils will be back at school as of the 1st of June, and should the school calendar that was approved by the NCC still need to be approved by cabinet as well?
We will start with Minister Nzimande. You have had enough time to ponder over those questions. Pepet.
Thank you, Minister Mtem, and thanks for the questions. Maybe let me start with the clinical training. By clinical training, it's doctors, I think, and other health professionals who have got to do this, and the Department of Health. We are not doing this on our own. We dare not do so. It was at the request of the deans, for instance, that the final year students be allowed to return because they are part of the health practitioners at this point in time. The other years that also require some part of clinical training but which are not final will be phased in as we move, hopefully, to lower levels. Let me also clarify this thing of laptops. At the moment, if we're counting all NSFAS students, we are talking single source that may be able to, even quite a number of them, to give this to us one time, which means that we will actually have to phase it in as we are able to get it, because we are even told, by the way, even a place like China doesn't as yet have that capacity, because they themselves, they are coming out of a lockdown. But our committee of the year, that I want to investigate a possibility of a way of assisting missing middle students with affordable loans. That's what it would be. It would have to involve the banks and so on. For me, no student should be able not to acquire some form of money. If it's NSFAS, yes, it's NSFAS, but missing middle, no student should not be able to go to a facility where they can be able to be of gadgets, the laptops. I want to have a discussion with the universities as well as others as to how do we also assist those missing middle students who cannot afford to have that. It's just that we are not as definite as with the NSFAS, but we are looking into that. It's a matter that is of concern to us, even if we can go begging to Good Samaritans to say, come donate a laptop here or there, so that no one must be left behind. I must say, by the way, some universities have started doing that. Those who have got some better resources, they have started not just giving NSFAS students, but even some of the missing middle students. But that depends. We appreciate that. They mustn't say then, therefore, we are putting more pressure on them. Look, you know, this issue of some institutions who have started with online learning already. We share the same concerns that no student should be left behind. But what do we mean by that? Let's be clear. You know, when I said in my opening, I'm sure maybe people did not notice that much, when I said we are constrained by the very same problems we want to address. We have an unequal South African society. There are students who come from better off families. They are likely to have lots of advantages. It's not something we celebrate. But the most important thing for us is that by the time we finish the academic year, not a single student must be left behind, even if some may not start at the same time. We debated and agonized over this and said, no, let's not stop those universities who have started. Resume academic activities for the rest of the students, irrespective of where they are, whether they have got laptops or connectivity or not. We might not be able to do it in exactly the same way, because we want to be fair also here and be honest in Vedas. We discover that but 10 are really in a bad situation. They need assistance. That's what we'll be working on. Because we inherited an unequal society. We're not celebrating it, we don't like it, but it's a fact. The fact that then you may have different at the end of the day. Now, this relates to when do we finish the academic. No one can claim to have experience of what we are facing, on how to deal with what we are facing. We are all new. You normally look for the part of the river that has got stones, in other words, not deep. And then usually you use a stick. Desisho sifana nabantu abawela umfula abangakaze bawele sifuna amatshe ukuthi angaphi ngehead. That is why we consult, as also Minister Motshekga was saying, and Minister. So we might not finish the academic year for everybody by gets left behind. We are hoping it won't be later than April, the latest, if we happen to finish next year. But who knows? Who knows? We can plan and we'll be consulting. So that, and we are committing now, and we've committed with all the institutions. We can't just use online. Even online, by the way, the means of just supporting. You know, there isn't a full-blown thing that what we are committing to is that we will do all we can to reach out and to make material, to reach out to rural areas and so on. The other way is to say, if we can't do that, we identify like or B or C. So we are prepared to do that. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough, but we are determined because we don't know college or university. You get asked your details, including your phone. All what we are saying, please make sure that your phone numbers are there. Because they've changed their cell phone numbers, we can't be able to reach them easily. Of TVET college students, I think it's that we are able to be in touch with our akuyona ama-video esingawazi ukuthi awana angacacile nento ezinye nje eziningi idelike into eziseceleni idata le difficult one. I know I'm getting lots of Facebook messages and we are committed to saving lives. Go and fetch clothes or whatever else they might have left at university until we open umongameli. We can't say, well, today hambani nolanda impahla esikoleni. We don't as with you but we cannot allow that. Learning materials, as we have said, nobonga angimzwanga kahle hle ukuthi uthini noma mhlawumbe bekhuluma ngalento ka21, hoping that no institution will be left behind. That's the
because he's saying there's always been pass one, pass all. Pass one, pass all. Kids were promoted to one. It's never happened. The city, we have trimmed the curriculum with the internal grades. It's difficult to move forward. So the curriculum team, let's extend it 2 days. So term 1 is, we are saying, so which means we'll have 2 terms remaining, and 5% are going to be assessed on 75%. What we also we pressure because we have also in the department programs when unable to do them now. So they're helping us to scout out what are the experiences what they're doing studies on an ongoing basis. But they're also interacting with fires burning, but the strength is in the classroom. Because even those that schools have been able to access, so we're not saying it's a lost case, because as I said earlier, Chair, outside COVID-19, we were deploying ICTs to. So I've spoken about trimming of the curriculum to keep identified that's what the work stream has done as a matrics. Now we're September, so we're testing it from September. So the so Fimukwena also wants, as province have identified that there are some key senior people in departments that they can't, without risking, in a way that is code compliant. There are also major issues about both learners and education in a way that ensures that we can keep confidentiality of the information that are evidence from doctors. In terms of that are part of the plan that we have to sort out during this month of I don't know. In some instances, you could see those ezinye nje ukugula nje. Wangena umuntu achisa, want to pin it down to say, but some people were saying it's people in the construction industry, they want us to come in, they want to come and repair schools. Some in that we think if we begin to bring life in schools and to help build classroom opening might help. In terms of what was outside, so we lockdown, let's go in there. The proposed calendars, we said, Kamanda, if compliant, akala khutlela msebetsing ka di 8 tabeng ya hore si ready na. So have to by law, as soon as there's approval communicated on an ongoing basis. Those are the proposed dates. The first, because the NCC want us to come back to them, perhaps around the 8th, all the people with underlying conditions, we know them, this is the command team, but because we have to plan and work back, because I think people have to really appreciate that we hear them, we know plan to say, so Tata Yonki 13 million, so we figure balances that we have to make, and I think we have to discuss as a nation. And parents are beginning to ask, what are we going to do if our ECD are valuing and getting advice as to say, what is it that's possible? Because I talk but also
round of questions, because our intention, and you are right, this Monday, you are right. Nobody thought that we know that this, we can only, no other way. We can't overcome this with government, with us in dealing with this difficulty we are in. But what, this one too, we will overcome. It is now more audible. Next.
Thank you very much, Mr.
We have lost Benita. Raphael, you are listening? difficulty. I think we know that we don't go wrong. They are all written down. Nanga?
Yes, Minister, thank you. The first question is from Mahlako from SCB. It will not be receiving any benefits from the department. The next question is also directed to the Minister of Basic Education. What's the plan for teachers that have comorbidities, yes, that doctors can identify? Will they also be going back to school? Then there's a question from Matthew Service from various lockdown levels. Then there's a question from Wonga from Inkonjane FM to the Minister of Higher Education. In terms of laptops and other equipment for tertiary students who are assist them with permits, since there are strict law enforcement regulations on traveling in between provinces, and will the department be assisting with that? Then there is a question, this is the fifth question, Minister, from Bongekile from the Mail and Guardian, directed to the Minister of Basic Education. What plans are being made for those learners who are grade 7 and 12 learners who use private scholar transport? Will there be a way to liaise with the providers on what steps to take when transporting learners? And his last question is, there are teachers who work in different provinces but stay in a different to apply for permits.
Well, let me answer something at least. I'll answer the last one and the other one of transport. With the opening or the risk-adjusted approach to opening, there will be some kids and students that will also use public transport. The Minister of Transport will be here tomorrow at 2 o'clock to speak about what are we going to do in the arena of public transport on that score. There was a last question. I wanted to answer it as well. Cross-border, very simple. I thought that in the regulations we made that clear yesterday. To go to any other province, first of all, there'll be a once-off allowance that will be made to all such citizens who are coming from whatever province to another where they are working from. Of course, like everybody else who needs to move from one province to the other, there is a norm that has been established that you must get permit. You must be prohibited. So such teachers will be allowed because they will prove that indeed they are where you have gone there, you stay there. So there won't be this thing of going home every weekend because all of us are under lockdown but are now a different level 4. So we will not move from one province to another every day, every weekend. There'll be a once-off opening where we'll all go to where will be works. It applies to workers that will be going to various industries that will be.
No, there was a question about, so what I expect is that, because we say an institution can only operate on level 4. So for now, as I say, the maximum in a group is 50. So if those private schools can convince ourselves and the national team, a team, then they have to satisfy, they have at least, me will say, people can go back to work. What's going to happen about child crash? Who goes something number 2 in the neighborhood? What is going to happen? It's come out, and I think it's a matter that, as I say, we have to respond to. Bearing in mind, and still said, it is not. There's no medical evidence to say young children are resistant, but in all the deaths, I'm told there was no toddler that had died, even if parents were both. Is a matter under consideration. workers with comorbidities, it's the same with your over 60 and other people. So we've agreed with the unions, and even diabetes, it's not all of them. So if to it goes, so they've specified them, and we've agreed that quite important is to make sure that we agreed on how we're going to manage them. So when managers now in May go to schools, they are going to have to consider how many of their teachers have comorbidities. Agree or they're not at school. So schools could decide that, okay, telemarking work, we have considered all questions. Scholar transport, where children are brought by health, going to really work on what Tembu has answered. And then in terms of, also there was a question about, which is linked to the question of private. For instance, you have a small school, which is a multi, because there are 50, some 27, and the teacher is teaching different grades at the same time. So again, we're going to have to consider, besides this broad, connected to your coronavirus 19 team, district, school, and at different levels, which are going to consider even exceptional cases, but all is going in.
Okay. Abangakithi ngale ngiqhamuka khona KZN banenkinga abakwazi ukuthi virus but virus. Wathi umunye umsakazi hayi ngcono sivele sithi ngibonisa ke labantu abathi when I was explaining the Chinese way of crossing the river, but how phephetho manje wawusuhlulwa into elula njengesizulu kuthiwa ukusasa. Just a few things umvela say I won't be long because also uML thing, but it now needs to be bring to people together to write the exam. But ongoing, pass one, pass all. Something that was never the case in any case. We are not planning that because our commitment is still that we're going to finish there. So asking some who are saying return fees, ngithi akaNSFAS ama-fees azobuyela kuba, because NSFAS fees are government fees. Asiwafunda ama-fees ku-government, sesiwakhiphile kuthi nambe niyofunda ngani zakithi. Providers who are saying they had set aside accommodation for students, but they are not there and they are not going to rent. What's going to happen? Well, we said to them, you are business, you must apply in terms of government. The institutions in distress, this also, we will work to identify institutions in distress. We have identified them, not that we'll work to identify. We have identified them, but we'll have to find ways and means of how we deal with their distress. That will include, one must reprioritize. Even this issue of laptops, there's been no travel overseas or outside the country. So we need to be able to actually reach that overall goal. So we are calling on institutions. We must also involve veterinary doctors for clinical training also to. So it's something that we will need to actually urgently address. Change the deadline for submission of workplace skills, normally end of April. Now, engaging the trade unions to say, how do we deal with this 4 months payment? We'll communicate that, because we're able to communicate how that will be done. We are engaging with institutions to assess the need and so on. If you are not, but as we say, we are committed. The other question that has been asked as the last issue that I'm talking to now, Minister Mtem, is that also a message from my MLO. Are we not going to give exception to people who are doing research, professors, researchers, and so on? Well, if I'm not mistaken, the sentiment is on essential research that is needed now to tackle COVID. That's going to be the priority. Like the work done by Professor Slim Karim, which is about, we have to make exception that those researchers are able to go to work because they are researching, some of them are researching possible vaccines and all that, if it has got to do with COVID-19. Because without taking over your role in Verasa, because you are the one who makes the overall commentary, but I must say that The danger we must guard against. By the way, Professor Mampuel, you are right about this. I'm not talking just to you now, just to everyone. We must always be careful, and the President insists on this. We mustn't lift the lockdown or the phases by stealth. Because if we start allowing bits and pieces like now, will you allow us to come and fetch our laptops? You know, we may end up giving so many exemptions that in the end there is no lockdown, and in the end we cause enormous damage by subjecting our people to the danger of actually being infected by this virus. Ngoba omunye umashaya.
We will be taking the last round now, the third and last round. Let's try and see whether those who are calling in are there. I hope that we will be able to get them connected now. Bangas disappoint in front of ministers of education. Can we get the online callers to come in?
Thank you very much, Minister. The first call.
Raphael. Sorry, Raphael, we can't hear you. We don't know whether, it looks like you've been disconnected or you disconnected your time now that we are taking questions. I don't know how many you have. I'm told that you can. How many do we have then?
We have about 7 questions.
7?
Yes.
Okay.
The Minister of Higher Education, he's deal with this if it is true. Then there's a question from Bonga Dlulani of EWN, also to the need to help them, and for how long? Happens to ECD schools. Then there's added by which risk level the country is at, or at a particular point.
Why are you from Badegel? Okay. Okay.
From the 4th of May, it will in rural areas such as the Eastern Cape, where they hardly have proper and prepare the learners to go back to school. In the question from Nelisa, from what plans are being put in place. And then there was a question, Minister, residents, since they haven't been in raise, and the person has sent a clarification to say that the distance is 10 kilometers. So it would be someone who would travel, would be in 2 different provinces, but would do the daily commuting.
Oh, no, I think the minister should be able to answer it.
Now, there was a question about what happened on Monday the 4th. And I did indicate in the statement, Minister, that we have not, because of the virus, getting them. So we have postponed them. So all the learners, the 350,000 that were supposed to start on Monday, will only be able to write in December. That's why I mentioned that this year we're going on applications and many other outstanding matters that we have, ordering of books and all sorts of things that are administrative. We will start at, so different provinces will communicate. We actually are on the properly with the schools. The question of ukuthi izikolo ditlabulwa ukuthi izikolo sivunyelwe ukusebenza kuzofandise futhi kwi-team ye-command team ukuthi sesenze lokhu nalokhu nalokhu yibo abazathi ukuthi hayi nilungile or anilunganga. So it's not going to be by hook or crook, kuzoya ngokuthi isa. So that's the answer. So we'll really only open when the environment and the space allows us. Unfortunately, we are not the only decision makers in this instance. It's the team and the cabinet. So they've put conditionalities to say, asizi if le na le ayikho batabezi. So sivumelene ukuthi hayi manitha nizi masilungiseni. Parents said asibathumele abantwana bethu kungekenzeki lokhu nalokhu nalokhu. And those are all the things that we need the whole month of May to deal with to ensure that our schools are ready for opening. Under our regulations, are not able to deal with it, the whole spectrum of matters. For instance, it's not Mbizana Peda. Every day, people from Pumalang in the Free State who come to Gauteng because maybe there's a special school. Again, we've discussed that we'll have to deal with that case by case. Out the country, we are aware of that. Even the Minister of Home Affairs, that also in terms of cross-border country to country. Since there are kids who areas. The same, there are areas around Mafike where there's just really a fence is there. These kids must be by school with those matters case by case, but we will not, as Minister Mthembu said, kube ne wholesale. Ukuthi hayike ungavuka ekuseni wena sowusebenza ngapha and there's no one who knows it. So they'll have to be dealt with case by case. There must be application, there must be evidence. And yeah, so that's the answer. The opening of schools have to be code compliance, and then schools will not. What is at the same time?
I have not heard, to be quite honest, that there are some students who are deregistering. If we have got more information, we all have to stick to be in and travel this road, difficult as it is, until we all are able to be across the river. So if you have got more information, I haven't heard of students deregistering as a result of this situation. Ubonga is asking about distressed institutions. What we have said is that, for instance, we have identified institutions that are battling. Out of the 26 universities, it's 14, I think I said that, and 10 in a really difficult situation. We have asked every time now till end of May that those plans are developed. Then we will have to look at what assist those institutions with all what they want. No. Some assistance may have to come from them reprioritizing to be an absolute priority, because for us, absolute priority is finishing the academic year. That's what is priority number one. Which then links to no, because maybe now people's lives can't be second to it. It's a serious slogan. I know danger. We can't do both. We have to save lives and save the academic year if we can. Apambi. Ukuze sifinyelele la sifuna ukuya khona.
Minister Mohaule, Deputy Senior Officials, we really appreciate what it is that we are going to do as government. And I think the ministers have clarified what will determine whether we open as our teachers and all our stakeholders from this pandemic. But at the same time, we will never ever do. So we realize that have been beaming this and all independent radio stations. We really appreciate NCA, SABC, the live streaming teams, our people, because without you doing of the lockdown, as we against this virus, wherever they find themselves. And that's why we are where we are. Probably with distancing, physical distancing, social distancing, because that will be the norm. Wherever we are, we'll be wearing. In that way, we'll be saving South Africa. So with those words, we would like to thank all South Africans. They are part in different ways, I know. We really appreciate. So there are many under these difficult times. And thank you very much again for listening to this staying at home. That's how we will